Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Design Recharge. I'm super excited to have my friend Nathan Yoder on, and I've had him on a couple of times before, and he always, like, my face at the end of it really hurts because he always makes me smile so much. So today Nathan's really reinvented himself a few times and done side projects that have now turned into full-time and then full-time to freelance. So we're going to dig into all that and kind of see how he keeps a positive attitude and just keeps trucking down the road and trying new things. So Nathan, so good to have you.
Yeah, well, thanks again for having me on. It's always great to be here. I guess this is the third time I've been on at this point, so it's
third or fourth, because you went on with Sean, right, one time?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So I think it's number 4 for you.
Oh, okay. Crazy. Well,
this is episode 179, so it's quite a few.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, thanks again for having me.
Of course, I'm always happy to have you on. So we're going to go ahead and dig in, just in case somebody doesn't know who you are. Can you give us a little bit of your background and kind of tell us a little bit about your professional journey after school?
Okay. Yeah, so again, my name's Nathan. I'm a designer. I do a lot of illustration and lettering work, kind of rewinding to kind of how I got to that point. I grew up in Oklahoma in a little small town called Pryor, and just kind of real quick how I even got interested in it. Basically, in the 8th grade, I had a buddy whose dad owned like a screen printing kind of sign shop in town, and my buddy, wanted kind of a T-shirt design for a band that him and his buddy was starting, in the 8th grade, and so I kind of drew up this sketch, and he took it to his dad, and so the next day at PE class, his dad showed up and asked me if I wanted to draw pictures for his shop, So for me at that point, I was just drawing pictures. Like, I didn't know it was design or whatever. It was just, he would say, draw, some motorcycle guy, and then I'll put some type over the top of it or something. So I did that for a little while and got copies of Photoshop and Illustrator from him. And so finally I was starting to kind of head in the design direction. I started kind of printing T-shirts for myself. I bought a screen printer. And so by the time high school came around, I had kind of slowly become more acquainted with design and realized that's what I wanted to do. So I went to school at Oklahoma State University, Institute of Technology in Oklahoma, and just got an associate's degree in graphic design. And after that, started working full time at an advertising agency in Tulsa, and it was the spot that I had been interning at, so it was just kind of a nice little transition into full time work. And so yeah, I was there for about 2 years, and while I was there, I was doing a lot of kind of corporate branding and kind of advertising stuff. And I was just kind of realizing more and more how much I had missed drawing, because that was the thing that I had loved doing from the start. And so I just started kind of doodling anytime I could, and just posting my drawings online. And I guess if I could, I could probably kind of bring up some examples too while I'm talking here. So I'm gonna open the screen up here. Let me know if you guys are seeing this.
Yes, I am.
Okay. And yeah, let me know, you guys who are watching, if something's not coming through. So this is kind of an example of like the early days when I was first kind of posting these sketches. So, that first job that I was at, I was doing a lot of logos and things. And so when I was sketching out type for logos, it was all done on paper before I brought it into the computer. And so that was the thing that initially got me interested in hand lettering. I was like, oh, well, I really love to draw, and I really love design, and I really love, creating these logos. So why don't I kind of do some of this on paper, more than just a sketch? And so I started posting these things that I would kind of hashtag welcome to the week, just as an excuse to draw some type. And so I'd be like, welcome to the week of Friday, July 7th, 2012. And so I would do this kind of consistently every morning, just kind of as I was gearing up for the day or in between projects. And one thing led to another, and eventually I ended up getting a job in Southern California, just kind of out of the blue. Got a phone call and a job offer to come work out there, kind of designing T-shirts and doing a lot of the same stuff. Diane's wearing one of the shirts that I ended up doing for the company out there. Let me see if I've got what my next one is here. So let's see. So this was kind of in between, when I very first started drawing stuff. This is kind of an example of how the welcome to the week doodles and stuff turned into kind of projects in the evening.
These were pretty small, right? These were in just like a Moleskine or whatever, however you say it, and then you would color them and stuff in the computer.
Right. Yeah. It was all just kind of pen and ink stuff. And especially then my big thing was just working with a pen and not even really sketching things out, just kind of going for it and letting the mistakes and stuff kind of dictate in a lot of ways what I would draw next, so I would draw the little ship at the top and then try to figure out, what was the phrase even going to be as I kind of worked the way down. It's like, what kind of space do I have? What could I fit in this ribbon? So it was really just an escape from the mundane. It's like when I was drawing with a pen, I wasn't overthinking things. I was just enjoying the process of creating whatever it was that I was creating, and so again, it was just really cool to stumble into a full-time position where I got to do that every day. It kind of like at the start when my buddy's dad showed up, it's like that just kind of stumbled across my path. So,
but you were really working a social media on the side. That was like you were doing hand lettering, you were committing a lot of time. It was a very deep side project. It wasn't like you were just doing it once every 2 weeks or something. I mean, this was like after work and you were very passionate about it, right?
Yeah. I mean, and I was single at the time, so I didn't have much of a life, and so I was, drawing. I was like drawing every chance I could. It's like, I don't know if a day has gone by since I graduated college or since I started drawing again at this agency I was working at, where I hadn't drawn something that day, even if it was just a small little doodle. So, I mean, it's definitely been a process of, just kind of sharpening yourself, just every day as you're kind of moving forward. So, again,
when you went to the company in California, you were with Zachary Smith and Sean Togetsky, which I can say without practicing now. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, and you also said it was kind of like iron sharpening iron. Y'all kind of really pushed each other, and Sean was doing a lot of illustrations, and that kind of sparked something in you, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's just it. Like when I was in Oklahoma, there wasn't really too many people doing what I was doing as far as just kind of working with design, like on paper, kind of by hand kind of stuff. So when I got the job out in California, it was just, it was really inspiring to just be surrounded by these guys that were doing, exactly what I was doing. And just being able to kind of share work with them, like see what they're doing, kind of share each other's processes and kind of figure out, what we want to adapt or kind of from the other person's process or whatever. So, I mean, it was definitely an inspiring time, and it was only a year, but yeah.
Right. But it was funny because you were the oldest out of those guys, and they had been doing it. Zach had been doing it for quite a while, but it was just this intensity of these people that were really practicing this craft.
Yeah.
And I think you dove in headfirst and you were right there with them, but I just think it's funny because you were still pretty young as well.
Yeah. Because I think I was like 24 or 25 around then. but yeah, I don't know. Again, it's like it was that spot. There were just so many beyond just Zach and Sean. Even just everybody else in the company that were doing their specific jobs. Whether it was a designer or a project manager. I
The
mean, they were all
video
just
guy.
so good. Yeah, video guy Brandon Wall was and Mark Anderson. They were kind of the video guys there, and they were so good at what they did. So yeah, it was such an inspiring place. To be. And I mean, and especially kind of looking back on that now, because after that, I went freelance. So I just kind of, I went freelance. And so now, I've been working freelance since then. And so I'm, basically working by myself all day. And so, I mean, it's freelance is great, but if you can find the right team and you're with the right people, it's like, I would trade an amazing team of talented folks over solitude any day, So,
Yeah,
but it was a good season there.
for sure. Hey, just to wonder, can you guys see our little pictures? Can y'all tell me in the chat?
Oh yeah. Or
Okay, sweet. Okay, great. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about some of those. So you go from full-time working at a design agency or a advertising agency in Tulsa. You get a full-time job in Southern California doing hand lettering, which you'd been doing on the side, and then you worked there for a year, and then you decided to go freelance. And you actually moved. You moved from California to Washington, right?
Well, I actually moved from California up to Portland, Oregon.
Portland.
And that was really just kind of like a whim kind of move where one of my buddies and we were just like sitting in our apartment one night, and our lease was about up, and we had been trying to find a new place in California, and we had both started working freelance at that point. And so we were trying to find a place that was gonna, so that we could live below our means rather than above our means. And and I mean, rent prices had gone up over the year that we had been there. And so any place we were looking was going to be more than what we had already paid when we had, very stable jobs, or so we thought, so we were like, hey, like, what if we just moved to Portland? And so we, like, the next week flew up to Portland and checked it out. And I immediately fell in love with it, just because it was kind of the best of both worlds, where California, I never completely connected with the culture there, but I loved the creativity that was there and the energy. But then Oklahoma, there wasn't quite as much creativity, but the culture there and like the hospitality and the community aspect of Tulsa was so amazing. And so when I moved to Portland, it was kind of both of those things, where, Portland is such a creative community. And the community aspect of it is also really strong. They really value the community aspect of it, So yeah, I moved to Portland, and my buddy actually didn't end up moving there with me, so I ended up kind of moving up there by myself. And then a couple other friends of mine ended up meeting me up there, and so that's how I got to Portland. Anyways,
and you had a beautiful trip. Like, you took this road trip, and it was like a month long or something, or maybe I'm just remembering it wrong, but you took these great photos on your trip, right?
Yeah, it was I kind of just stretched the trip out and drove up the Highway 1 on the coast, and I think it was around like 4 or 5 days of just kind of just driving slow and pulling over anytime I wanted to take a picture. It's like I was the only one in the car, so I only had to ask myself, I guess, if I was gonna pull over. And so yeah, I don't know, it was really pretty, and it was just a cool kind of transition driving up there. It also just kind of gave me a lot of time to just kind of think about like what I was doing, where I was going, like what the next few years of my life kind of were going to look like. And again, I was still pretty fresh into freelance at that point. And so it was also just kind of mulling over the transition and kind of the past year and all of that. So
yeah. when the transition happened, was this something, I mean, and you're really positive, but it still can kind of get to you, I think, at some point. Yeah. And it can, so it's like what was, you thought super secure, it became not as secure or whatever. They changed the way they were doing their art. And
Yeah.
so you thought something, and then, there were somebody else had other plans. And so you've had to deal with that. And a lot of people, if they lose their job, or they, it's just their job just isn't working for them, or they cut them in pay, or whatever it is, contracts change, that can be really depressing. And sometimes people just want to maybe even leave the field. So what kept you going, and how did you say, no, I'm going to make this work and move? Because really, there's a lot of unknowns.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a challenge, and that's kind of the thing about social media, is like you get to share, just what you want to share, and you don't have to bother everybody with all the, the nasty details, or kind of the unglamorous aspects of, of life, you know what I mean? But we're all going through those things. Like, we all have, these kind of struggles that we're going through, and we're all trying to figure out how to, make it better, so for me, I think kind of like what you were saying, it's like, even just deciding, am I going to stay in the industry, or am I going to kind of go back to something that I'd done in the past? That was definitely something I was asking myself at that time, because I was somewhat fresh out of college even. And so my portfolio, if I wanted to go work at an agency again, was going to be pretty weak, because I hadn't done a lot of corporate branding kind of work, But then on the illustration side of things, I had all this illustration work that I had to share. So my portfolio, as far as illustration and lettering goes, was somewhat established, because I'd spent a year, every day kind of doing this thing. But at the same time, what agency was going to hire me to do illustration work for them every day, because it's kind of a specialty type of thing. It's like, maybe agencies all over the country need illustration all the time, but one agency doesn't need it every day, so.
Right.
So that was kind of my dilemma at that point. I was like, okay, so do I move back to Oklahoma, and do I kind of go back to what I was doing before I got here to the coast? And that's why freelance for me was the only option. I was like, well, I just have to make it work. And I think the driving factor behind that was just kind of the idea that I felt like I had an ability, and I really wanted to use it to its greatest potential. And I kind of felt like going back home, or kind of starting over, would be a step in a backwards kind of direction rather than moving forward. And ultimately, with my work, I always am searching for ways that I can inspire and encourage others to do the things that they love to do. And so, I don't know, for me, it was just kind of a season of kind of wrestling with this uncomfortable kind of feeling, and kind of pressing through to whatever might be on the other side. Because I think, again, just kind of like at the start, when I was either a kid and my buddy's dad showed up, or when I got the call to move out to the coast, all of those things were so new, and that's why they were so exciting. And those are the things that we're always kind of like crossing our fingers that are going to happen to us in our lives. But then once we find ourselves in a position where we ourselves can make ourselves uncomfortable, we generally choose the comfortable route, And so I think this was one of the first times where, rather than an opportunity kind of presenting itself to me, I was kind of deciding, okay, like, I think I'm going to be the one to make an uncomfortable move. And so that was kind of the move up to Portland. And again, staying positive and all of that. Some of it is just kind of personality, is like just trying to be self-disciplined, and probably a greater percent of that is just prayer and fasting. You know what I mean? Just like I don't know, I hope there's something more to the story, and I feel like it's going to be okay in the end, so.
Well, and sometimes it's just about pressing through, that you felt like maybe God didn't call you out of that yet. And so that it wasn't to go back to Oklahoma. It was like, hey, you have more to do, keep pressing on. But it's not always, I guess one of the things me and you talked about last week was it's not always a given that you're going to get, it's going to be easy and you're going to flush with cash and there's still so much effort that has to go into continuing to do new work, continuing to explore new things, as well as doing self-promotion. So even when you feel really crappy, because you need to still get work, and it's not and we had talked about this, it was like, you think it's just you, right? That is everybody else must be doing fine because they seem to be fine. But really what it is nobody's talking about that. Right.
Well, kind of like what you were saying at the start, and then I'll kind of talk about what you were saying there at the end. It really is kind of, again, social media kind of gives us, especially in the past couple of years, has kind of given everybody the impression that if you work really hard and if you're sharing your work consistently, that you're going to get noticed and that you are going to get presented all these great opportunities. And to an extent, it's like in theory, like that's true. It's like work hard and the result of your efforts is going to be something. It's like something's going to come from your hard work. But I think sometimes it's easy to let our expectations rise a little too high, or think of ourselves a little too highly and think, well, because I put in all this hard work, I deserve this, and a lot of times, and that's just not the way life goes. I think and that's the thing. It's like life has a great way of just kind of humbling you a little bit and being like, well, okay, before Instagram and everything like that was around, people were working really hard to kind of earn their place in the industry. And it's great that social media has kind of created this platform where people can be promoted so quickly, but we shouldn't let that become our new norm because it's never been the norm, So I think we just have to remember, and I've been trying to remind myself, that there's no formula to life. It's like you try to make something happen, and hopefully it does. But I think the secret to kind of just being kind of content throughout the whole thing is just being grateful for what you have and not looking too far down the road to what you want to happen. Because I think a lot of times when I just stop and consider the things that I do have, it has a really great way of making me forget about what it was that I was really wanting to happen, because we have so much if you really think about it. And there's so many people who have so much less than we do, and they would be slapping us if they saw us complaining about it, So I think that's kind of my, if there's any kind of like a secret to staying positive throughout it all, I think it's always just kind of reminding yourself, okay, what is the most important thing here? Why am I even doing this in the first place? Am I pushing through all of this just to be noticed and just to like earn some kind of level of fame or something? Or is there something greater behind my work that I'm working towards? Because I think regardless of if you become successful or not, you're always going to be frustrated if you're just working for yourself, because it's going to be frustrating getting up the mountain, but once you're on the top of the mountain, it's going to be frustrating as you try to kick everybody off your heels as they're trying to take your spot, so yeah. But yeah, and like what you were saying at the end, those are all the things that, people aren't generally talking about. So I think through your struggle and through your kind of attempts to try to stay positive, the temptation is just to think, I'm the only one struggling through this. I'm the only one who might be kind of trying to find work and work isn't coming in, or whatever the issue might be. And so I think, again, kind of like when I was at Sevenly, that's what's so important about community and finding friends and people who are both doing what you're doing so that you can relate, but also friends who aren't doing what you're doing so they can remind you that, hey, there's more going on in this world than just lettering and illustration work, or whatever your job is.
Right. And I think that there's always been kind of a greater purpose. And granted, you may do some work that maybe doesn't always have that same. And that was, I think, was one of the pulls to Sevenly movies, because they were given $7 to every, like this one went to, this shirt went to the autism or whatever. So,
Right.
but I feel like, we say, or as Christians in the Bible, it says, God's not going to give you anything more than you can handle. And I don't really know
Yeah.
if that's an exact verse or if that's just people saying something.
Yeah.
But there are times when you feel like, wait, I think maybe somebody made a mistake, because I don't know.
Yeah.
But sometimes there's a piece at that, because again, it is that higher power. Somebody else's, knew you were going to be there and didn't want you to give up.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I think, again, I think that's kind of the aspect of it where it's like, I may have plans, or may have these desires, but but you have to remind yourself that just even the fact that we're alive today is a gift. You know what I mean? Like that's not something that we had any power over. And if we really stop and again consider what placed us where we are today, we'll realize that a lot of that wasn't done in our power. It's like it was just either opportunities, it was people that came into our lives, and that's the way that I like to look at it. Is like it's like every good and perfect gift comes from God. It's like whether you believe in God or not, if good things happen, it's like I believe that came from God. You know what I mean? So if it's an opportunity, like when my buddy's dad came and showed up, I'm like, thank God, or if it's the phone call when I moved to Oklahoma, it's like, thank God, but I don't necessarily think at the same time that any like, I think it's kind of like what you're saying. It's like, we're not going to be given more than what we can handle. And I think a lot of that also kind of comes down to, are we being grateful for what we have? Mm-hmm. And if we aren't, then are we going to be trusted with anything more than that? So again, things to remember as a freelancer. It's like, it's comforting to know that, if you do believe in God, that there's something more there that is kind of watching your back, but at the same time, he's not like a maid that you can boss around, like say like, hey, like, give me this job or that job. It's like, he's like reminding you of the good things and the true things, so that you can stay grounded. And that's a good thing to have if you're self-employed.
It makes your work better too. If you've had a little struggle, again, it makes you able to relate. If you just were dropped out on the top of the mountain, you never had the struggle of getting there. And unfortunately, life is not just one mountain. We are many mountains, many valleys, and it is this continual journey.
Right.
And so I feel like, people might look at you and say, hey, you did the Miller Lite Harley Davidson thing, or you did, in Field and Stream, you were getting all this work. And sometimes it's like, I'm scraping by this month, but yeah, I got this. And, you never know where somebody is, but you just need to reach out if you're having trouble and you feel like you can't make it and you feel like you need to leave and do something else, go work at a bank or something,
Right. Yeah. Well, and again, I think that's the thing. It's like, the more we do, the more we feel like what we're doing is completely our own doing. And so I think that builds a level of pride that says you can't reach out to anybody else, or you can't let anybody else know that you're in need, because you just let everybody know that you're the one that did all these great things. And because you did all this, everybody's going to be like, well, why can't you just do it again? Or if you're in need, or if you are struggling, then that just makes you look bad, but if you're able to, if you're able to just remain human and convey that to people, regardless of whatever job you do. It's such a silly thing to even think about. It's like big company or small company, it's all people. And if you're looking at it that way, it's like you're just working with human beings. Some just happen to have more money than us. It's like if if you're looking at it in that way, I think, and you're staying grounded through all of that, then when you do need help, you're not going to be kind of so full of pride that you can't ask for help, or that you can't just talk to somebody and kind of have the comfort of a friend that says, oh yes, I'm going through this too. Because I think that's the thing that makes good, strong friendships and relationships is being willing to be vulnerable. And I think the more prideful we become, the less vulnerable we become, and therefore the less really good, true, solid friends we start to have, and then we're weak because of it.
Well,
Because we don't have people to relate with.
so let's talk about community a little bit. So as a freelancer, when you're working at home, having a real face-to-face community is really important, but then also online social media can play a really big role. But it is having those trusted friends and those people that maybe are doing the same thing, but it is like turning out and saying, hey, to a friend, maybe at an agent, say, hey, I'm actually looking for some work. Do you know anything? And I think sometimes people think this doesn't happen and, oh my goodness, they're going to think that I'm too needy. But really, if they're your friend and you say, hey, I think that that's an okay thing to do. I mean, you can't do it every week, but it's also, so can you talk a little bit about that? I mean, have you done something like that? Have you ever reached out to your friends and been like, hey, you know what, I'm kind of hitting a dry patch, or, I have some extra time or something?
Yeah. No, I think that, again, it's like I kind of have my freelance friends that I, talk to a lot, because, talking to other designers that, is one thing, but then talking to a designer who is in the same kind of, situation as you are, that's nice just to be like, okay, like how's work for you this month, or, is it slow or is it busy? And just to remind you that a lot of times, what's happened in the past. It's like, okay, well, months ago there was a dry spot and I was starting to freak out. But then, the very next month, came this really great project that made up for all the time that I had kind of spent kind of twiddling my fingers. And so it's like part of it is just reminding yourself that you signed up for this and that this is just something that comes with the job, but then again, kind of like what you're saying, the other part of it is just again, hopefully staying kind of grounded enough to be okay to just ask a friend, or reach out to some people and ask if they need anything, because that's the other temptation, if things are really going great for a while and all this work is always coming in, and you don't have to reach out for anything. As soon as you feel like you have to, reach out to something, all of a sudden you feel like you're a failure, or something. And from the outside, it's like people, they have no idea, what's going on. So,
but that's the internal struggle that you are thinking other people are thinking, or you're thinking they're going to think this if I do this. And sometimes you just need to be honest. And I also feel like that's calling you to, God saying, hey, you need to ask them, like he put something on your heart, and I don't know, like I really do. Thankfully, I believe that's the way it works. So, you were just talking about something and I was like, oh, that's exactly one of the things that I had on my list. But okay, so when you've gotten, so this kind of goes Lisa in a question, and it's kind of in the same vein, so we're going to go ahead and answer it. So for illustration freelance, where do you put your energy when you're looking for new clients? Do you focus on specific sizes of companies or industries? Can you answer that?
Yeah. Well, I think, again, for me over the years, that's kind of changed a bit, because when I first started, kind of the size of the company was kind of the main goal, because especially, again, growing up in Oklahoma, I knew a few people who ended up in big agencies where they were actually working on big accounts. Like, even if they were just a production artist, it was like, wow, you're working with Coca-Cola. I was like, that's awesome. It's like, well, yeah, it's cool, but I'm just making these like presentation decks. And it's like, no, but that's awesome, man. Like, so it's like everybody, at the kind of the spots that I grew up around, it's like they were all working for local clients, just like the mom and pop shops around the corner, or, some local thing. And so, so for me, it's like success was working with a big client. It's like, if I could just get some big brands in my portfolio, it's like that would be awesome, you know. And unfortunately, to an extent, it can be kind of true sometimes in the industry. It's like perception is huge, and if you don't have some big brands in your portfolio, then you know, there are people who will write you off because of that, you know. So that's a bit sad. But so that was kind of priority number one. I was like, I need to work with some big companies or something. But again, kind of like what I was saying earlier, it's like, and I'm really thankful that I was able to kind of eventually kind of do some work with some bigger companies. But you know, or
Okay.
go.
Well, I just want to say something once. So I've never had like a Coca-Cola or Miller Lite or Harley Davidson or anything like that. But I actually think, and I think you get to a point, because I don't think everybody can work for everybody. Every designer out there can't, you know, it can't be that. I mean, I think when I was younger, that was a goal too, but it just didn't come to fruition, and I didn't like work it that hard. But then I realized that really a good designer is just solving problems visually, and it's helping the company that they're with, because unfortunately you're not just going to continually work for Coca-Cola unless you're just doing, you know, slide decks or something, you know, presentations or whatever.
Right.
So I just want to, you know, make sure that people realize, like, a lot of people have that, but we don't all make that. But it doesn't, I think it's a myth. Like, then does that mean that you've never made it and that you've never touched lives with your designs, or you, and I think that's incorrect. Like, I know there are companies that have completely grown, and these people had these dreams that they would have never, I guess I value, and I think you do too, value, you know, the little companies just as much as the big companies. But I think when you're younger, it just feels like you need the big company.
Right.
And I think to do some things, I think in illustration it is a little bit harder. And I do think you need to have some of that. But anyway.
Yeah. No, yeah. And you're right. And I think a lot of even just growing up is kind of learning, or it's just kind of, it's almost like when you're a kid, it's like you're kind of unsure when you're beginning to walk. And so a lot of learning how to walk is even just getting the what do you call it?
Balance?
Yeah, the balance, but like the confidence, you know, it's like getting the confidence to be able to try walking more confidently. And when you're more confident, you're able to take more sure-footed steps rather than second guessing each step, you know? So I think, like what you're saying, it's like, I'm not discounting working for big companies by any means. But I think that does play a role in some ways in gaining some confidence so that you can, like, you know, take some sure-footed steps in the forward direction, whether it's with a future big company or small company. But I think, you know, it's all about just like, is your mindset focusing on that so much that it's unhealthy, you know? And so if you are working with a smaller company, then are you just like down in the dumps, even if they want something that could be potentially really great, you know? So
well, like the Hood sisters, and I know, you know, well, you guys lived in the same area. I don't know if you ever got to meet them, but
no.
They did a mop company. Like and I was just like, oh my gosh, they were like totally made this mop company, but they've done stuff for big brands. But then they let the little guy really shine too. So that's cool. Keep going. You want to talk about some of these? Like, you want to talk about Miller Lite and Harley Davidson? Did they contact you?
Scrolling through. Oh, go ahead.
Did they contact you?
It was an agency that was working with them, and they contacted me. So I'm not sure how exactly they found me, but that was really cool to be able to work on that project. Yeah. But I don't know. I feel like I went long-winded on the first half of my answer, but I was going to say nowadays when I'm looking for work, or like my criteria for finding a project is more about just kind of like, what is the work doing, you know? So I think, again, even part of the whole change in direction that I've kind of made in the kind of past few months has been an attempt to get back to kind of my core kind of driver in my work, because it's always been the same, but I feel like I had started to let myself come off the rails a little bit in terms of I want my work to inspire and encourage others. And I found myself in my work kind of trying to create this tough guy edge, you know, that kind of made me look, you know, just, you know, maybe more confident than I was or something like that, you know. And it's like, well, I want, was that look necessarily encouraging and inspiring others? And it's like, well, I think if it was inspiring them, I felt like it was inspiring them to kind of have kind of some like gritty, like kind of edge to them or something, you know. And it's like, again, if you really spent enough time with me, I'm just not necessarily that kind of tough guy kind of person, you know. It's like, I'm just not. And so I think it was kind of me just stepping back and being like, well, okay, it doesn't change the fact that I enjoy doing that style, but if it was just me, and if I was just, again, going back to doodling like I was in the beginning, it tends to be more whimsical and just kind of fun, you know? So,
right. So Andre wants to know if the thing in the top right is a sketchbook.
Yeah. So that was a project for Scout Books, a company in Portland, Oregon. And so they do little kind of journals and sketchbooks. And so this was a project for them. I did a little calendar that was on wood, and then these sketchbooks, and this is a postcard down here.
So Titus wants to know, he knows that you use Instagram to share your work a lot, and he would be interested to hear what he thinks about the recent update and if it will affect how and what you share. Sorry.
I mean, probably not necessarily like what I share. I think it's cool that that kind of like Snapchat, you can share kind of a story. And so like this morning, I kind of was sharing kind of, here was my drawing before I colored it, and then I was coloring it, and then I kind of shaded it at the end. So I wouldn't necessarily share that much on Instagram in one day, but through the stories thing, I think I'll probably start thinking of ways that I can share a little bit more of the process through that. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I think the whole way that Instagram is kind of choosing for you, you know, what's going to pop up in your feed and things like that. I mean, I think that's definitely affecting things, and there just aren't as many eyes on your work as there was kind of when Instagram was first starting. So, I mean,
you can create these groups. This group that I'm in, I know Doc's in that group. I think it's like limited to 15 people, and then you just push the little arrow that's like the curved arrow. Have you heard this?
I don't know if I've looked into the groups or anything like that.
So if you share something to a group, here's a little hack for everybody today. If you share something, you build a group of people, you share something to the group, and then that group they have to be like people who are going to like help you, you know, and what you want to do is then they click in and they like and comment on your post.
Oh, okay.
So you're not sharing maybe everything with the group, but you're sharing your big things, things that you really want to help promote. So,
yes.
So in a way, it really has worked. Like, I think we've been in the group for maybe, Doc, is it like maybe, I'm terrible with time, maybe like a week or two? Like, I can't remember. But like, I've seen the posts that I've done to the group have definitely been gotten more traction. So it's a way to kind of like beat the algorithm a little bit. So So talk about this project. So for anybody who didn't know, so mainly letterer, even at Sevenly, you kind of started doing more illustration, and then that was really where you felt like you were needing to focus is going into illustration. And then you started doing these, and I love mine that I got, and my friend Jay got one, and he loves his. So tell us what this is.
Yeah, thank you. Well, this is kind of the second of kind of a who knows how often it'll happen kind of series that I'm doing, you know. So the first one was kind of just a zine of just stories and poems that I had kind of put together kind of in the effort to just kind of wrangle my thoughts into words over the course of the year that I was in California and then moving up to Portland. So I kind of just put all those together in the form of stories and poetry, and then put it into a little zine that I sold on my site. And I think I still have a few of the first one and this one available in my store. But then this one is kind of a smaller issue. and this one kind of, rather than being a bunch of different stories and poetry and stuff like that, was just one topic that I kind of hit on. And it's called Knock Before Entering. And so the whole kind of theme running through the essay is basically what it is just kind of the whole idea of, you know, kind of checking how we're kind of communicating with one another, because it's one thing to communicate with people face to face, but then I feel like we tend to communicate with people differently once we're online. And so it's kind of like there's this, we're like granted harsher words that we can use when we're online, when we're not face to face with people, you know. And so
Right.
the essay was basically just kind of hopefully getting people to kind of realize that and ask themselves, you know, it's like, would I talk to people in this way if they were standing in front of me, and are my harsh words towards people online really changing their mind? You know, it's like if somebody is trying to get you to, if I was trying to persuade you to come over and kind of see things from my perspective, generally what I was kind of saying throughout the essay is, you know, it's kindness that wins people's hearts over. It's not you know, harsh words and anger, you know. So I don't know about you, but for me, it's like when somebody raises their voice, I tend to put up my wall rather than breaking it down, you know. But when somebody shows me that they respect me and that they have the best for me, then I'm more willing to hear what they have to say. So that, anyways, not to get off on that too much, but that's basically what this zine was about.
You did write all the content that was in these, correct?
Yeah.
Andre asked that. So Brian Jan, he's like, I'm trying to click on the pictures or scroll or something. So they are really easy.
Okay.
Will you show that picture, well, the original drawing of this? Because I think that's
right. Yeah.
really nice. So again, it started kind of as a bigger piece, and then you kind of went in and, you know, the back door, it looks like, I thought the back of it was the woman, right?
Yeah. I drew a bunch of these different little kind of portraits, you know, with the door on there, and I kind of sprinkled them throughout the zine. So when you open it up, there's kind of a bunch of these different people, just to kind of, again, give you the idea that each one of us has gone through our own struggle, and each one of our own homes is different, you know, when we walk inside. So I was just trying to kind of convey that kind of, I don't know, how everybody's different, and the way that we need to talk to them, you know. So that happens through conversation and getting to know them. Even
when you're slam busy, you still are trying to do some of this other stuff, because, and some of this is just reflection, right? Things are changing. You're taking time to write some of these things down and taking note of where you are and how you're feeling, and then just continuing to make some work that is in relation to those things. And then you're figuring out a way to either make some money or to share that, or to
right.
Maybe making the money is at the end, but you're sharing this and helping other people, and then, but you're paying your bills along the way. So,
right.
And Brian asked if this was a triptych.
I'm not sure what you mean by that, maybe.
So 3 panels, but it's really, it was one piece, and you just kind of cut because the number 10, that image over there to the left. Yeah.
This one here.
Yeah. Is that a triptych? I guess but it's not. It's just one image, right?
Yeah, just one image. Yeah, one illustration, and then I kind of cropped it. On the inside of the zine, when you open it up, in the center kind of spread is this full graphic, kind of in color and stuff.
Gotcha.
But yeah.
Sorry, it's my secretary in the office calling.
Oh, no worries.
Anyway. So, all right. So really, you also you went from lettering to illustration to animation. So can we talk a little bit about that, and then this other kind of style? So again, you're always kind of showing that you have these multi-styles that you can do, and then you've kind of honed in on another one that you're really using with the illustrations. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So, I mean, again, kind of, I feel like where I'm at now all kind of started when I left, you know, the company in California and started, you know, working for myself, because again, all of kind of what put me where I was when I left to work freelance had all really been started when I was still pretty young, you know, as a designer, kind of trying to find my voice. And so I was doing all of this work and really still in a place of self-discovery. And then somebody, you know, saw that work and really invested in it and encouraged me to do more of it. And so I'm not saying that it wasn't me or it wasn't honest at the time. You know, it was what I was doing, you know, and we all grow, and we can't fault ourselves for, you know, growing. You know, it's something that we all have to do. But I had kind of gotten to this point again where I was like, well, yes, I've done it in the past, and yes, I'm doing it, but is it necessarily in my growing process? Am I saying that I'm stopping here and I'm not going to grow any further? I'm not going to keep discovering or exploring, like, is this really who I am, like, or who I want to be in my work, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I just felt like I wasn't there yet. And so even with Dark Water, which is this little zine series, which was also a bit of a style break from my usual stuff.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's kind of the stuff like this, which again is the more kind of commercial work, the stuff like that I did for Miller. So all of this was kind of along the lines of the stuff that I was doing when I was working freelancer at that company in California. And so I just kind of decided I was going to keep exploring and keep trying to figure out what was next. And so I'd always been inspired by traditional tattoo work. And so just kind of, again, in an attempt to kind of keep pushing things forward, I kind of started dabbling in like more heavily influenced tattoo work rather than kind of inspired on the side. And so I spent a good few months just kind of really just all of my work was just kind of riffing off of tattoo work. And
so is this a lot of stippling? Is that how you're getting that kind of shading and that kind of texture?
Yeah. So it was all just, you know, a ballpoint pen, Sharpie for the line work, and then a ballpoint pen just like tapping away for, you know, making all the shading. And so it definitely took a good amount of time. But, you know, it's like I really enjoyed it, and I still really enjoy traditional tattoo work. I don't really have I only have one tattoo, and it's not even traditional, but it's like I really enjoy, you know, the craftsmanship that goes into that, you know, the trade. But I knew this was really just having fun. Yeah, I really didn't really expect this to ever go anywhere. It's like, you know, people seem to enjoy it, but unless I wanted to become a tattoo artist, I was like, I don't know what this is going to turn into. So, but
what does that mean?
So this is Quiet Coyote. My wife is a second grade teacher, and we were dating at this time. And so I would come into her class every once in a while and just kind of, you know, draw with the kids or something. And she had this thing where it's like they would all be talking and she would just be like, Quiet Coyote. And, you know, it's like all the kids would, you know, just that was the signal to just be quiet, you know.
I'm going to start using that. And so what this is this, I don't know. I would think this is R in sign language. But
yeah, that's just fingers crossed, like hopes, you know. Okay, really, the thing I guess that I also like about tattoo work is just kind of how, like, everybody kind of has their own meaning in their tattoos, and half the time you wouldn't expect them to mean what they actually mean to that person. And so this was basically just a bunch of random symbolism, and, you know, it doesn't necessarily even mean anything to me, but when people look at it, I like them to think that maybe it means something big and important, you know. So
Titus said you should talk about your slow your breath down tattoo.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that one, I wish I had it to show here. Maybe I could dig it up while I'm talking, so people could know what we're talking about here.
Switch back to, or I guess you can still, because we can't see what you're doing on the outside.
Yeah. I'll bring it up as soon as I find it here.
Okay.
But that one, it's basically two hands that are here. Let me see. it's really hard for me to talk and
I know.
video
Well,
this.
here, so one of the
Okay.
things that I thought was really interesting is that you do keep learning, and so I think that that's a misnomer again, another myth that designers are like, oh, I find my style and that's it, and then, but really you can't. Like, you can't just be one style. You can continually move and change, and it can continually grow, and you can kind of get more niche, but in the same way, you know, you don't eat the same food every day, and just like trends change with um in the market, and so you'd have to be able to kind of to stay as a producing artist, you do have to be able to continually adjust and do so. Okay.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, again, that was kind of part of it was this, I didn't know where it was going to go, but I was like, well, this is a lot of fun and I'm enjoying it. And again, that's the thing that you always have to remind yourself is, why did you even start? It was because you enjoyed drawing and you wanted to share this with the world, in the hopes that somebody would see it and be inspired to do something. And as soon as you start thinking of it in terms of what's working and what isn't working, then you start to overthink it and the magic's gone. So
Yeah.
this, I didn't know where it was going to go. It eventually helped me with, what I'll talk about here in a sec, but it was just me having fun. So it was kind of like me starting to draw again at my day job in Oklahoma. So this design in particular, just to kind of talk about it really fast, was basically just kind of, there's a song that I kind of referenced in a recent collaboration, or I contributed this design to a project that's kind of inspired by tattoo work. And I talked about a song in it that kind of inspired, or that kind of, the theme in the song kind of reflects what's going on here. And so it's basically the idea that, though we may not be kind of tied together, like literally, when anytime we're in a relationship with somebody, or more specifically with this design, it was kind of my kind of showing that relation, or even our relationship with God or whatever. It's this thing that can't be broken. So a sword is a very tangible thing. That's like this very earthly thing, but no sword can separate us. So that was kind of the concept behind that. Again, trying to kind of visualize this kind of weighty kind of thing in a traditional kind of tattoo style is just always really cool and just, I don't know, kind of fun.
That's awesome.
So, yeah. But I guess if
Jump
that,
in it.
okay. So, I mean, kind of like I was saying, this was just kind of an exploration, didn't know where it was going to go. But then kind of talking about where I'm at now, with my illustration work is, again, kind of trying to get back to a more fun, kind of whimsical style, that really honestly feels a little bit more like me. It's like, I'm always doing this kind of what if kind of imagination thing where I'm just like, what if this happened? Or, if when I look at a go-kart, I'm like, if I was a kid and I had, whatever little money I have now, that's more than I had when I was a kid, I would, I would take a squirt gun and rig it to the side. And I would probably put, a speedometer on there on my handlebar and put a cup holder there, put a weed eater engine in the back, and I'd be set. So it was kind of like trying to bring kind of that whimsical side of me into my illustration work. And so in doing that, I was bringing a lot of the same techniques into this stuff that I was using when I was doing the tattoo inspired stuff. So really not much changed beyond the fact that the subject matter was shifting, and that I was trying to kind of loosen things up again.
Right.
Because again, with the tattoo stuff, it's very tight. It's very, it's all about getting really nice line work. Traditional tattoo work is always about, trying to make things look nice like that. And so,
but you're doing stippling here as well.
No, this is actually just colored pencil.
Oh.
So I'm still trying to kind of get that same look.
It does. It has that.
Yeah. Well, that's good, because that's what I was trying to kind of replicate without spending hours.
Yeah, that's what I kept thinking you were doing, though. I was like, oh my gosh. No, okay,
yeah.
I get it.
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like the other thing about colored pencil is, ultimately what I would love to do is do work for children. So children's book illustrations and stuff. So I'm sorry, I've got to silence some messages that I'm getting
We
right
don't
now.
hear them, just so you know, but I know we're like cutting time close, so I just want them to see some of your animations too.
Yeah, okay.
Well,
Um,
show the pogo stick though, and
okay,
like just quickly go through like the buns. I think that's hilarious.
yeah. So this is again me and my imagination, like upgrading your kind of standard childhood toys.
Right.
Uh,
The
this
city's great.
yeah, this is just kind of a study, you know.
Mm-hmm.
These are some insects that I drew up for my wife, and then she was doing a insect unit in her classroom, and so these were illustrations that she was able to put into her worksheets and stuff like that.
That's cool.
Yeah, this is just a sleeping bear. How I was feeling one morning. Um, this is a guy working on his truck. It's like my dad was always working on our cars growing up, and so it's kind of inspired by childhood memories. Yeah, this hot dog one was for National Hot Dog Day.
Is that still not stippled? That's all colored pencil?
Yeah, just colored pencil,
Man,
and
it looks really good. It
thank you,
definitely has the stipple.
thank you. Yeah, it's
So
all kind of about what kind of pencil you're using and the paper, kind of the texture of it,
yeah.
make it look like
On, Andre says the insects could be cool to have on textbooks or school materials, which I actually think you would totally be interested in. And Brian, his wife, is an entomologist.
that. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I
I mean
love
that's
this next one too. Sorry.
ah no, yeah. Long term, I would love to do more stuff for kids, or whether it's book illustrations, whether that's textbook or picture book. Yeah,
Love
this is
this
kind of
one.
this one I feel like was again kind of inspired by the transition between styles. It's like you feel like there's something great on the other side of the canyon, but it's just about trying to clear the gap.
You know what I love about this one too? That it's on the other side, there's a fruit tree,
Yeah,
and the tree is a home for somebody. And so it's like all these other things. So you have the dinosaur bones, which is, history, or I mean, and granted, maybe you weren't thinking all that much in there, but there's
yeah,
the diamond and the chest, and you know,
right.
but that even just that tree is more, a better tree than the other tree.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. It's like the soil is better, so the tree is bigger, and there's fruit in the tree, and there's treasure below ground. It's
Mhm.
not just the value on top of the land. So uh, this is a little animation I kind of put together. So yeah, I did a lot of motion graphics work when I was in high school, actually. And kind of post high school, and even at the agency I worked at in Oklahoma, but I never really pursued it too hard. So lately, I've just kind of been like, well, why not? I always really enjoyed it. So
So
that's something that I've been trying to kind of.
Brian has a question. Do all of these have an application, or are some of these just for exploration?
All of this more colorful stuff, for the most part, I've recently started working on some client work in this style, but really everything here has just been personal work. It's just trying to show people this is what I want to do, and hopefully I'm showing you enough of it that you can trust me to do it for
Right.
you.
And some of that is, it's like, how quickly am I turning things out? How often, as also how consistent is the work, and is it good? And you do have to kind of show that, especially when you've transitioned. And that's another transition that you've done, is not just illustration. You've also illustration style you've transitioned, but you have to create a body so that people do trust.
Yeah, and that's it. And again, the thing that I felt like I was starting to lose a bit, when I started exploring, when I went freelance, is I had a style when I went to uh, work at the company in California, but then I started to lose that style a little bit as I explored. And because again, I felt like I wasn't done exploring. And I feel like with this style, I finally found something that feels very much like me, and like a style that even within this style, I feel like I have the freedom to even do some more exploring. And so that's why I kind of created a new portfolio, and hey, like this is this one style, because I think art directors and that's what they're looking for when they're looking for somebody that they can work with, is consistency, and they're not going to be surprised with something totally different if they hire you for their project.
Right.
So But yeah, there's a
So
few
I love, let's see the bird.
others.
Does he have a name?
No, I did not name him, but this is usually a looping GIF, so it's not very long.
Right. It's a fast one, but it's cute. And I really
Yeah.
like this other one, which was a compilation of you and somebody else, right?
Yeah, it was. I'm not sure if it's. Can you guys hear music?
No.
Okay. Oh, it's okay. It's not that much. It doesn't add that much to it. But yeah, this was again when I was doing the more tattoo inspired stuff. This was a commission for somebody. Somebody commissioned this owl, and then Deneen Pottery is the guys that made the mug. They hit me up and wanted to see if I'd be interested in putting that illustration on a mug. And so there's actually still some of these mugs available if anybody's interested.
Yeah, they're awesome.
Pottery's website. So, but yeah, so that was a lot of fun as well. It's always cool to see your work on something, not just online.
Right.
Yeah.
So I want to do this one last question, just to kind of how important is having and keeping social media presence even when you're busy, and how important is it to self-promote? Like, how are you, when you're doing something new, how many pieces are you putting out there, and how often? Or, I mean, and again, I don't think that there is a formula, but I do think it's more than what some people may think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, it's kind of, well, for one, it's really important, it's like if people don't see you online, if they don't know you exist, then they can't hire you, or they don't know you exist, So, I like to think of it like, it's kind of the 10% rule, where it's like 10% of what you post is going to be like 10, like whatever you post, however much you post, 10% of those people who see it are going to actually react to it. And then 10% of the people who react to it are going to respond to it and like take action. And then probably 10% of those who take action are actually going to turn into a real project that pays you. So when you like narrow it down that much, it's very few, so it's like you might have a really decent following, but if very few people are interacting with you, then that means very few people are contacting you, and very few of those who are contacting you are actual, projects that have a budget, or, that really kind of understand what it takes to make a project happen, so it's really important. So regardless of how busy you are, you might say, it's like, I'm really busy, or I wish I was busier, but I'm busy with other life stuff, too busy with other life stuff to post work. But if you need more work, you need to be posting things, unless you have some secret portal that feeds you work.
But if you're a freelancer, it just needs to be part of your week. It needs to be something that you're doing on a weekly basis, not something that you're doing whenever you're not busy, because you will get out of the mind of those people if you don't continually. So Nathan, I could stay talking to you forever, but I don't want to. You probably need to eat something else besides a pizza.
No worries.
But so I want to share how people can follow you and to see more of your work. And so on Twitter and Instagram, you can find him at Nathan Yoder, and that's Yoder. And I put it over in the chat. But then you also have two different URLs. And so do you want to talk about why you have two different URLs? And so one is Yonder Studio, YONDR studio.com. And then one is Nathan Douglas Yoder.com. So tell about why two.
Yeah. So Yonder Studio has been kind of my ongoing portfolio since I started freelance, and kind of like I've been talking about during the course of the show, that's very much one style that I feel like I've kind of landed on over the past couple of years. But kind of once I decided to take things in a more kind of colorful, fun direction, I just knew that it was too much of a deviation to really sneak it into the current portfolio. And so I just felt like it needed to be something different, and it needed to be its own thing. It's kind of like Honda and Acura. It's like if Acura tried to put one of their cars in Honda's circulation, like nobody's going to pay for it, or it's not going to find the right target audience, you know? So yeah, with NathanDouglasYoder.com. Yeah, Nathan Yoder was taken. So if you guys know Nathan Yoder, whoever he is, that has my URL, to persuade him, that would be great. But yeah, so Nathan Douglas Yoder, I just had to make it something separate because, again, like I was saying, there's no formula to this. I didn't want to completely take down Yonder Studio because I'm still going to be doing work from there, and I'm sure that'll be evolving as well, but it'll be taking a little more time than just kind of switching all the work out, you know?
Right. Okay. So I just want to make sure. So just going to repeat the URL. So Nathan Douglas, DOUGLAS, Yoder, YODER.com. And then Yonder Studios, YONDR Studios. Nope, just studio, no S on the end. Sorry, I'm like looking at the link to make sure.
No, it's okay.
So we didn't get to talk about you transitioned from being single to being married, but you kind of talked that you said, you know, your wife or whatever. So I'm just thankful that you were able to come on, and I hope you guys are liking the new platform. It is, you can't just click in, you have to, you know, go to the email or whatever. But Nathan, it's been awesome. Like, I think you're a huge inspiration to a ton of people, and definitely to me, and just keep at it. And your work does make a difference, and your life matters and your work matters. And I'm really glad that you found something that feels more like you. I mean, I love that style. I absolutely love the creativity. And Andre earlier said, you know, I think it was either Brian or Andre said that there's so much conceptual stuff in your work, and I love that too. But which site would they go to if they wanted to get dark water, or if they wanted to get some actual pieces? Is that share that.
That would just be store.yonderstudio.com.
Okay. So, and is there a link from Yonder Studio, or do you have to write store dot?
There's a link from Yonder Studio. It's just in the information kind of page. So if you go to yonderstudio.com and you click on information, there's a link in there. So yeah.
Perfect. So that's good. Store.yonderstudio.com.
Right.
Andre said it was hard to find, but he found it.
Yeah.
So So next week, guys, we have Peter Del Tondo, and he is going to be talking about comparison, and just about being like a project manager and taking on, knowing how much to take on, and then also maybe when to bill. So he does a weekly billing. So people are prepaying for his work, his time, which I think is really smart. I do progress billing, so I'm excited to hear how the weekly billing goes. And I just think that's like a cool way to do. And he also definitely feels like we are working for a purpose. So I hope you guys will join us next week. It's actually the same link. So if you keep this, you can keep the same link. For a year, I have the same link every whatever. So giving you the insider view.
Yeah.
And you guys can follow me at Design Recharge on Twitter or Instagram. And then you can always go to rechargingyou.com to sign up and get the list. You get the questions on Tuesday, and you get the link on Tuesday also, but nobody ever clicks it from there, I don't think. But I give it to you 30 minutes before we start, so you can make sure, and you can add it to your Google Calendar so you don't miss an episode. So guys, thanks so much for coming. And Nathan, just thank you. So, and again, remember, we're on iTunes now, so feel free. We're always on YouTube as well. So iTunes, give us a rating if you don't mind. And I just want to tell you guys, thanks so much for coming. And Nathan, thanks for being such an inspiration.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, it means a lot. Well, thanks for having me, and thanks to all you guys who tuned in. It means a lot to have you here and just hear me blabber. Hopefully it was somewhat beneficial to somebody somehow.
It was hugely beneficial, and I always get something out. So tons of people saying thank you, and I guess my audio was like a kung fu movie. So sorry about that. But thank you guys. I'm going to hit stop.